about the VOD and the silver screen. Kevin and Tom and Joe know all there is to know, from masterpieces to deep fried tacos. And if the movie sucks, you might hear them say, there's no telling where the guys will take you. Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, cause we already warned you. Better watch out, it's gonna ruin the plot. Real spoilers. Real spoilers. Real spoilers.
Broadcasting from the lush but not lavish studios located in the basement of the O'Keefe Institute for Advanced Film Snarkitude, this is Real Spoilers, episode 761, Blade Creator.
Fair enough.
It rips off a lot of movies.
Well, I mean, I think there's certain concepts that are kind of universal with sci-fi and...
Yeah, but it's ripping off movies that aren't sci-fi.
Okay, well, I'll be interested to talk about it for sure.
Yeah, so and ripping off is maybe a little harsh, but
Yeah.
but anyway, I guess before we get to all that, let's go around the table and everyone can introduce themselves.
This is Joe. This is Kevin.
And this is Tom. In case you couldn't tell, that was not Joe.
For the people not watching, this is why you have to watch on
Right.
YouTube. You would never
You
know.
would never know that was not actually Joe.
And those are the dangers of AI.
Yes. If this movie has taught us nothing. Except I think this movie taught us that AI is our friend and cute and we should love it.
Well, we'll get into that too. It's a complicated subject.
Yeah. But not for this movie. But Joe is not with us this week, but he should be back next week. But so you'll just have to suffer through myself and Kevin, whereas I will just suffer through Kevin.
Feelings mutual. We're like Statler and Waldorf.
Yes, whichever one is older. So anyway, before we get to all that, let's do some shameless plugs. Don't forget we're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, iHeart, TuneIn. Or I guess I need to stop saying Google because Google Podcasts are going away.
Man, I'm so like Google Podcasts is the one I use on my Android phone.
You're the one.
And then
You're like seriously. So like for the clip out,
Yeah.
right? Like which gets
and I'm subscribed. I'm the one on
yeah.
here.
Like we get. I mean we get some serious downloads for the clip out.
Yeah.
And I bet you every month, whenever I get the Google report, it's less than 100 downloads from
Yeah.
Google Podcasts. Like almost.
Well, I can't
nobody.
download it more than 100 times,
Yeah.
Tom. I told you I would help out, but I just...
It's just fascinating how few people
Right.
actually are using Google Podcasts, or they're pushing everybody to YouTube Music.
Yeah, I mean,
get
I
it
guess that could be good in a way. I mean, I know they're trying to promote their subscriptions to the music stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, if it gets more people to watch our YouTube channel, right? If it's somehow linked, I would guess
Yeah.
it's going to be in the same ecosystem.
I don't know because it sounds. I haven't just a little bit. I've read. It sounds like you just plug in your RSS feed,
Yeah.
and it's going to live there with a static image, which seems would create confusion for the people that are also producing video versions of their show.
That is weird.
Like us. So I don't know. It's the details at this point are sketchy.
Okay, well.
But so is Google.
Right.
But anyway, back to shameless plugs. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/real spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group. You can also share an episode. It's super helpful to the show. It's greatly appreciated. It's just free advertising for us, so more people check us out, and we're not doing this for no reason, and our wives aren't mad that we're
Wasting all this time.
wasting all our time on this. So people who were kind enough to share an episode over, I guess, the last 2 weeks
That's right.
include Chris Valls, Gabriel Lugo, Richard Krotzer, Tom Dowdy, Julian Jordan, Phil Timon, Chris Magic Man, Tammy Lynn Powers Betts, Travis Tewitt, Christopher Rex, Heather Sachs, Librarian Cynthia, Lane Levanway, Glenn Cougar Mellenbrewer, Ralph Tribble, Taylor Ward, Brent Smith, Dissect That Film, Invasion of the Remake, Mike and Oscar, The Film Bee, Ronnie Castle, Colby Mack, Geek to Me Radio, Binge Movies, In Session Film, Ryan Terry, Feel and Film, Nostalgia Cast, James Install, David the Red 17, Vertigay 314, Batman Rye Guy, and Matt Neglia. So thank you.
Bat Neglia, don't give away his secret identity.
Yeah, sorry. So anyway, thank you very much for sharing an episode. We greatly appreciate it. Also, don't forget we have a Patreon, patreon.com/real Real Spoilers, where for $5 a month you get all sorts of bonus content, and we like you extra. So, and the aforementioned YouTube channel.
I was gonna say
that you're certainly watching at this very moment.
Yeah. So if you're not on Google Music or YouTube Music, you're definitely on YouTube watching this. I mean, you're running out of options unless you're an iPhone user.
Yeah.
So we had a few comments. Joe was kind enough to mention our longtime YouTube fan, Matt G Official TV, now known as Matt Gofficial TV, as Joe has dubbed him. And
yes.
he said he heard the shout out, and I said, "Don't you like the sound of Gofficial TV?" And he said, "I don't like it. I love it." And I said, "Trademark Real Spoilers." So he is now Matt Gofficial TV. And also Brad Hyen said, "Thank you very much for covering this episode. He's been bugging me to cover it since he saw it in theaters and was happy we circled back." So he wrote a big long explanation. I don't want to spoil it because go listen to that episode. If you haven't seen it, talk to me and then go read his YouTube comment. But he kind of broke down what it was an allegory for and some of the things we talked about. And we had mentioned that it was kind of like a drug movie, right? Like where they would do montages and the kids were getting high on drugs and these kids were getting high on the supernatural experience. So he went into that. So
supposed to get high on life,
right?
Not high on the afterlife.
Right. There you go. See, that's like a Smokey the Bear or McGruff the Crime Dog. That's a PSA that Tom is now from Real Spoilers. And then finally, last but not least, we have a new user, at least.
No, because Brad Hyen is least.
Well,
right, just to be clear.
So we have forgive me if I'm messing that up, but Betherin RP2YN. That may be one that you or Joe mentioned before, but they said, "I just want to comment to see if my name gets butchered again." Well, there's pretty much a guarantee on that.
You're welcome.
Or included in some Kevin conspiracy. Now, I don't remember talking about any YouTuber conspiracy.
We've been doing this so long, people will reference things and we're like, we said what?
Oh, I probably one of those things where, because the name Ryan is in the name, and we were talking about our family members liking each other. So since it's Betherin-RP2YN, that sounds like Ryan, I think that was the conspiracy. But anyway, so thank you for commenting. I mean, it's great. Like we've really obviously for a decade have been focusing on the audio portion, and we've posted stuff on YouTube here and there, but it never really got any traction.
Right.
But now we have these cameras and new editing software, and a lot of extra time and effort does go into the video. So if you guys do watch stuff on YouTube, if you can give us a subscribe and check out the show, and even if you still listen on your phone and your podcast player, but subscribing to the channel helps. We can get ad revenue after maybe like 500 subscribers, and we're at, I think, 350, 360 now. So like we're getting there. Maybe it's higher, but I thought it was 500, something like that. So if you can at least give us a subscribe and check it out, because I mean, we'd like to think our production quality is decent as far as independent podcast goes.
For sure.
But thank you.
Yes. So anyway, there's all that. Again, let's dig in, shall we?
We shall. So this film was directed by Gareth Edwards, who most people probably know from Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is one of my favorite Star Wars films. I think it's one of the best Star Wars films ever made. I absolutely love it. He also did that Godzilla movie in 2014, which I thought was good. It's the one with Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, where they were brother and sister in the MCU, and then they were husband and wife, and that, which was just, it was weird. I mean, obviously different studios, totally unrelated, but for two actors to so closely go and act in a movie together, so that was always kind of weird. But anyway, it wasn't Bryan Cranston in that for A Cup of Coffee? Was that the one where he's in the beginning and then?
Yeah,
or was that a different one? Or was that the newer?
That was the first like big reboot of Godzilla was with Bryan Cranston, because that was the one that was like Jaws.
Yeah.
And he even plays a character named Brody.
Okay.
And so I think
I'm conflating
he did
the
next one,
next
which was King of the Monsters.
Most recently.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But not the one that was Godzilla versus King Kong.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. That one was garbage.
Okay, yeah. I liked Kong Skull Island, and I think the guy that did Kong Skull Island is that Jordan, I'm blanking on the guy's name. He's also working on a Metal Gear Solid movie, which is like a long.
Of all these, I think Kong Skull Island has been the best.
That was fun, right? That was a big.
It was
dumb
like
action
exactly
movie.
what I wanted from a big giant King Kong movie, which was just dumb fun. And the other ones have either taken themselves a little too seriously, although I think King of the Monsters was the best of the Godzilla one so far, but then Kong versus Godzilla, which I hoped would have been like Skull Island,
was a snooze fest,
was
right?
just kind of dumb.
It was
and like
I remember that one being boring. But the only ones I remember though are this guy's Godzilla movie and the Skull Island, which Jordan Vogt Roberts is the one that directed that. And again, he's working on a Metal Gear Solid movie, which is a really famous video game series, and Oscar Isaac is cast in the lead. Like it's been in development for a while. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know if any of that has been filmed yet, and especially with all the strike stuff, which may be coming to a close at the time of this recording.
It sounds like it's pretty much all over but the shouting. So
yeah. So it will. We'll see where all that goes. But anyway, so the point is, Gareth Edwards, I think, is a really talented director, talented writer-director.
Looks amazing.
Well, you know who the cinematographer is of this movie? So Greg Fraser, who's one of my favorite cinematographers working today for the past 10 years, he's been on fire. He did the cinematography for Rogue One, which is just an absolutely gorgeous, I think the best looking Star Wars movie next to Rian Johnson's. Like, Rogue One is a beautiful film. And he did The Batman, which, was an incredible looking movie. Dune, the new Dune movie he did.
Yeah.
So Greg Fraser is incredible. He just he captures these shots, and I think a lot of it, it's not, I mean, the whole movie looks incredible, but he does these establishing shots, and especially when you're creating a world like a futuristic Star Wars world or kind of a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk, futuristic like this one where there's machines but things are kind of grungy and run down and all that.
Let us look at it for a second.
The establishing shots are so important, and I think that a lot of times directors, who obviously play a big part in the scenes and everything, but even the cinematographers, they don't let you live in the world. And one thing I really love about this film and the cinematography is it lets it linger, and they pull back and they show you the world, and it feels like this is a future that could really happen in a way that...
I can't believe this movie was made for only $80 million.
Can you believe it? And that's what I'm saying. That's Greg Fraser for you. I think... And it was filmed on like a prosumer camera. It was filmed on like one of those high-end, 8K, whatever, like James Gunn films on red cameras too. But like the cameras weren't like those $1 million IMAX cameras and whatever. Like it was filmed on something that a indie filmmaker would pick up and make his movie. And,
gotcha.
And that is
and I guess that makes sense because it's got a very art house vibe to it.
Yes,
like it is very much like I like the look and feel of this movie. The story was a little. Overall, I enjoyed it, but the story's a little wonky. Like I feel like they're wrong.
Well, I think I think it depends on what you take from it. I think on the surface level, especially with all the discussion around AI and the writer's strike and them talking about AI involved and everything, I think if you just take this movie as a pro AI movie, then I think that sends some mixed messages. I actually saw the film with Blake and we talked about it afterwards and about that, but I don't think that's exactly what they're trying to do. So
but I don't know. I don't know how you take anything else from the movie. One, with the ending, and two, when like the embodiment of AI is a cute child. Like they clearly want you to root for the cute child.
But if you take a step back, so we're always talking about AI as taking people's jobs. Like I know it helps with things, but like totally replacing people.
Right.
And Skynet, AI is going to evolve and kill all the humans. Obviously, none of us want that. I mean, no one wants to be killed by robots. But if you look at it,
you want to be killed by, Kevin? Go on.
So it's like, I get it if we're talking about like, all the dangers of AI and everything, but we use AI on this show.
For sure.
We use AI to edit podcasts. We use AI for websites. We use AI in our, whether you even know it or not, a lot of your apps use AI to predict things that you're going to do. So I think that this movie is saying that we fear the unknown, just like we do with people that look different, that live different cultures. AI is something people fear and they want to attack it.
Every new technology is met with fear, right? It's like
at some point people were scared of video games and we're scared of cell phones and we're scared of...
What's the opening musical number from Bye Bye Birdie?
Oh, I mean, I can picture when she's
the one where they're on the phone.
Where
they're on all the kids are on the phone. Have you heard about Hugo and Kim, right?
Yeah.
And that whole scene is like, these kids today and their telephones, right? They're always on the phone talking to each other. Right. It's crazy.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with them? right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the, and it's where it's like,
These kids and their rock music.
yeah, and then it's like, oh, these kids, all they're doing is watching TV. And now we're like, oh my God, kids won't even watch TV. They got to look at it on their phone.
And then it was video games.
And yeah,
video games are going to ruin,
but I will say that AI is different. Like, and I'm not even against it, but I definitely think that there needs to be some sort of like cap or regulation, or like I think it does have a very real possibility of doing significant damage, even though it can also help a lot.
Sure, left unchecked, but what technology couldn't? Like I think.
Yeah, but this is a little bit more insidious than
Sure.
just kids are playing video games instead of reading books.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so.
But at the end of the day, what they're trying to tell you is that a lot of technology is good until humans get a hold of it. At the end of the day, what we find out, spoilers, is the big catalyst of the entire meltdown of society and the war on AI is it was a human programming error.
Yeah.
So what they're trying to say is that we're fearing when we blame the technology.
If you believe the AI, right? Like, it's like.
But I do truly feel what they're saying is the AI is good and they're just doing what they've been programmed to do. Nothing leads you to believe the AI is bad. They're like, what will happen when we win the war? Nothing. We want to live in peace. Like, there's no reason to think any of them are bad guys.
But I will also say you hear that from one simulant, they call it, right? Like, this isn't like they have a governing body that's making this announcement.
Mm-hmm.
It's one rank and file soldier, if you will, making that claim. We don't know that.
But the head of the resistance, so to speak. I mean. We could say that because we can't know what every character everywhere is saying. But everything they've shown me in this story is that the AI is protecting themselves from being destroyed by humans, and the humans are trying to destroy AI because a human had a programming error that caused them to level LA, right? They leveled it, and then we went to war on AI, and now AI is being hunted, but AI is at the point where they are like almost indistinguishable from humans, right? You can see that they have a thing where their ears should be, it's a hole and a moving, and the visuals, the CG, again, for an $80 million movie, this looks incredible.
No, I mean, for an $80 million movie, this thing looks amazing.
This looks better than a $200 million Marvel movie. Yeah. Look at the CG in this compared to that. And this is what shows you that if you...
But I will say, I don't think a Marvel movie wants to look this way. Right? Like, this movie looks very grounded in reality, and I don't think Marvel movies want to look that way.
No, but it should be it should at least, the CG should be of the quality where you're not looking and going like, why can't you get that guy's head in a mech to look normal? There's no reason why a movie with $250 million budget can't get the scale right. And it's not that it can't, it's that they don't give it the time and budget. They rush it and all that.
Right.
This movie shows you with $80 million how good things can look. And sure, of course, there's things that you can tell are like, that's not real, that's CG, but it looks so good and blends in with the world. We always talk about that if your CG blends in, like, you can obviously tell an animal or a robot thing is CG because they didn't make that.
Right.
But if it moves at the right frame rate, if the lighting is right. Lighting is a huge part of CG being realistic.
Yeah.
And this film, more often than not, everything blends in with the world.
Oh, it does.
And nothing jumps out like, oh, that was bad CG.
I don't know that I saw any shot where I was just like, oh.
I don't think so either. There were shots where I'm like, that's really good CG because it was, but it wasn't Uncanny Valley, right? It didn't pop out to you where you're like, oh, that's...
Yeah, I know it's good CG just because I know there's no other way to get it.
Right?
Yeah, like logically, I'm like, well, you can't do that a different way.
Exactly.
But
I was blown away. I was blown away how I was sucked into this world, and a very, again, realistic. We talk about all these futuristic worlds and not necessarily post-apocalyptic, but you talk about the Blade Runner 2049s and how technology can evolve, and there's always a lot of times there's those grungy, lived-in. Not Blade Runner. What's the Arnold one? Like Total Recall.
Oh, yeah.
All those futuristic, but things are grimy and gross.
Yeah.
And, I mean, the Blade Runner proper is a great example, too.
I mean, I think that's the first one that ever really did that.
Yeah.
Where it was like, well, it's futuristic to us, but not to them.
It's
right?
it's like with the new cars, right? Like, you think that in 2049, no one's going to be driving a 2027,
right?
And that it's going to be run down. Like, not everything's going to be a shiny, clean, taken care of.
This is a complaint I make about movies that take place in the past.
Yeah,
that the mistake they make all the time is that if it's set in 1952,
right,
like all the cars you see are from 1952,
yeah,
and they're all super new and shiny because to get those old cars, they go to car collectors. Well, car collectors don't keep crappy
Right.
old cars. They fix them up so everything looks brand spanking new. And I'm just like, but that's not what it would look like. I'm always impressed when I see a movie set, 20 to 50 years ago, and I see beat up older cars.
Yeah.
I'm
Bring
just
your your old car. It doesn't have to be like a pristine condition. Like,
yeah,
let's
it's
get some real.
1952. Bring me a 1945 that you haven't finished fixing up yet.
Like, yeah, it was a project in your dad's garage. You never finished. Bring it to the set. So anyway, beautiful scenery. I mean, the cinematography, the set design, the CG. This film is absolutely gorgeous. And when you look at Gareth Edwards' films, I mean, if you think back, I know it's probably been a while since a lot of people have watched that Godzilla, but that Godzilla also, now it wasn't set in the future, but I just mean with the CG and any of the effects and everything, it was very grounded feeling.
Yes.
It had that grounded where nothing really popped out at you and made you think like, oh, that's, that monster, that building destruction looks fake. I mean, it was done in a way where it's very realistic. And
did you get a trailer for a new Godzilla movie in front of this? Godzilla -1?
I came a little later, so I didn't see them all, but I've seen that preview in front of the last thing we saw.
Gotcha. That looked pretty awesome. I've never watched like one of the foreign Godzilla movies. I was just like, you might have got me on that one. I'm like, that looked pretty good.
Maybe we should cover it. Yeah, I've heard they're really good. Like, I know there's one that Matt Reedy is now yelling at his computer, yelling at his phone because he watches all those, and he was always talking about the one that it came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Shin Godzilla, I think, is the name of it.
Yeah,
and it's supposed to be really good.
Yeah,
and it just didn't really pick up any traction over here. Other than people in the know, and they all said Shin Godzilla is amazing.
Nerds,
which we are proudly a part of.
Yeah, there's that. We're just lazy nerds who haven't watched that movie.
Right, exactly. I might have even bought it, honestly, because I heard it was good and just, it's in the
been
stack
on
of
sale
Blu-rays.
on Vudu really cheap a couple times too.
I think mine's in the stack of unopened Blu-rays, as you do.
Yeah.
Oh, it's $8.99 on sale. I heard it's good.
Yeah.
Into the stack.
Yeah.
Into the corner.
One day I'll retire and have time for these.
So anyway, great looking movie. Now, as far as the story goes, it basically follows John David Washington's character, who was undercover. So the stuff in LA has already gone down, and now the US has waged war on AI. And we don't really get a view of what the rest of the world thinks about AI, but it's like the US is anti-AI, and then New Asia, which is Asia, but it's like the futuristic,
but newer.
Yeah, right.
It's got that New Asia smell.
It's like it's like the League of Shoshars, the app. I mean, the names are there for a reason most of the time. So New Asia is pro AI, and that's where the last of the AI that hasn't been taken out is kind of hiding their bases, and the whole resistance is coming from there. I also thought it was really interesting that
the place with all the cheap human labor is pro AI, and the country with expensive labor is anti AI.
Yeah.
There's a scene later in the movie where they show you assembling. They show them assembling the simulants, they call them. And it was all people. And I was like, well, at this point, wouldn't they have simulants to assemble the simulants? Yeah. Why would you use human beings to assemble these?
That's interesting.
Why would, what is, so there were moments in this movie where I'm like, are they telling me something, or is this just a plot hole? I wasn't sure what to make of that.
I don't know. These worlds are so realized. It's hard to think that it'd be a plot hole.
But I can't figure out. But then at the same time, I can't figure out at this point in the development, they have so many simulants, right?
But they look are you sure the ones assembling them weren't just being viewed from the front? Like, are you sure they weren't robots?
I'm not 100%.
Because they look just like humans unless they turn sideways.
Unless you see the little whirly bird.
Right.
Yeah. But I sure thought, because it instantly peaked up lower. I was like, but these are people assembling these. Why aren't they?
So I think also, again, to go back to the message of the film, though, I think the film is trying to say AI shouldn't replace humans. AI is a tool, and a tool used poorly, right?
Well, they sure seem to have replaced law enforcement.
Which I think it does make sense in a certain regard for, if people are getting shot and stuff, to protect people, send the robots. But I don't think the whole force was. I do think there were some humans that probably worked in.
I don't know. It just seemed like whenever we saw police officers that it was simulants. It never saw humans.
I had trouble though too. But I think that makes sense. Not to try to take away any cops' jobs or anything, but if you're sending people to go bust down the door for people there with a bunch of machine guns and stuff. Like,
Okay,
I just think
in
like that's
moments
like setting
that,
a robot.
I see having a SWAT team that can do that.
But we
this-
didn't see the regular. I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, I think the task force we saw, again, this movie could have been longer. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that but like the world is so
They
fleshed
cram
out.
a lot of story in to where I would, like
Yeah.
the first 10 minutes, I feel like I got like 80 minutes of story
Right.
kind of like rammed down my throat.
Which
you
is
know?
which is what I think you have to do now, because studios are not taking risks on original properties.
Right.
And so you can't count on, let's have this be the setup for the next movie, because you know what?
No, I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Like, like even
And I
though
get
I
you're
felt
not
like
complaining, but
I felt like I was
yeah.
drinking from a fire hose a little bit, but I was also glad that I'm glad they're not dragging this out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, get to it.
I think it's a necessity, though,
Yeah.
because think about it. This is an original property. Like, just watching this film, and this is one I want to see again. I loved this film, and I'm like, this is great, and I bet no one sees this movie.
Yeah.
Because, one, it's sci-fi.
Yeah.
Unless it's Star Wars. I mean, even
Right.
Star Trek has trouble, but unless it's a known property, original sci-fi has a
Yeah.
really hard time, and original properties, as we know, have a hard time.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching this film like, this is great. I love this. I want more movies like this. Have you seen the box office on this? Maybe
No, I
maybe
have
look
not.
at, if you can look up a projection real quick while we're talking. I have the feeling this is one of those that's a great movie that no one's going to see, and then the studio's going to go, why do we even give this 80 million? Like, they gave it as low of a budget as they possibly could have given a studio movie with CG and special effects. And I have a feeling that they're going to be like, well, that was a bummer, and then we're going to get, I don't know, Grown Ups 5, Like, I
Right.
just, the bummer of it is I want to
All I have is Friday numbers, but
well, we can kind of extrapolate a little bit. What was it?
it made $5.6 million on Friday.
Any Thursday preview?
I'm
or-
assuming the Friday numbers include Thursday.
Which, okay, they usually do. Yeah, so 5 million, which means
It appears to, because
20
it's not listed under Thursday at all.
okay. So if it's 5, I'm just gonna say that it made 25 million opening weekend on an $80 million budget. I mean, it could do good international numbers,
If
but
it made 5 on Friday, I don't think it made.
I
25
mean,
over the
I'm giving
weekend.
it. I know I'm giving
I
it a
think it made like 15
to 20.
18.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was
and
trying to give it the benefit of the
for
doubt. That,
perspective, Saw made 8 million, and Paw Patrol made 6.8 million
Okay.
on Friday.
Okay. So, yeah, so it's a bummer because, I mean, these are the movies I want to see. We saw a preview for the Marvels before, and I loved the Miss Marvel TV show. Did you ever watch that?
I'm like on episode 4.
Are you liking it? I
Yeah.
think it's a really cute show. I
Yeah.
think that dynamic with her and her family, she's really charismatic. I love that show. It's one of my favorite. With She-Hulk, I think that,
I like She-Hulk a lot.
Isn't She-Hulk
Yeah, I
great?
thought it was really funny.
That was one of my favorite
It's like
Marvel shows.
for the boys that didn't like it. Like, I'm sorry, girls do things.
Yeah,
sometimes.
no,
grow the up.
It's so freaking funny.
It is. It's
and
hysterical.
the ending.
And she's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
like
ending,
I
right?
would.
Like,
yeah.
oh
yeah,
and
like-
the way they were like could have ended it like every other thing would
Yeah.
end, and they went that different direction.
Yeah.
and did the meta thing. I loved it.
It was Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right, which is also great. So anyway, the point is that this movie is not going to do that well. I think it's fantastic. I love the people.
The only hope this movie has is people find it on streaming.
This is a movie that I think will become a sci-fi classic. You can feel that because the movie is so like Rogue One has a really big audience. Like
Yeah.
people like me that think it's one of the best Star Wars movies. People think it is the best Star Wars movie. Like it just it's like a different. It just feels like something different. Like a lot of
Yeah.
the Star Wars movies, especially the new trilogy, other than Rian Johnson, but like the JJ stuff, he's all about like, let's make this feel just like a Star Wars movie
Right.
because it's comfortable. And then Rian Johnson comes in and does something different. You're like, whoa, this is really good and different. And then they're like, people got mad at us. Let's be comfortable again. And then you're like, this is boring and not interesting. So like Rogue One felt like it was doing something different. You got basically
But not too different.
Not too different, but
that's the
there's
the
no
sweet
Jedi
spot. Right.
except for the monk guy that's like doesn't have a lightsaber, but is
Right.
like I believe in the Force. You have all characters you've never heard of before until
Yeah.
the very end, right? And it made one of the most compelling, interesting Star Wars films yet. And it just shows you can live around that universe, but not every movie has to be Luke Skywalker and family. It just
Right.
we got that. That's great. But Star Wars, here's these galaxies far, far away, and we all center in on the exact same couple planets and the
Right.
same people. It's like there's a whole there's galaxies and galaxies of story to tell. So
It's Jedi privilege. That's what it is.
right. So anyway, so it's like the same way that he elevated that, I feel like, and I'm not saying Star Wars is bad. I'm just saying lately with the newer stuff, you're kind of like, come on, give me something new, right? Be innovative.
That's what TV is for.
And yeah, and he did give us something different with Rogue One. And here you have this futuristic sci-fi thing. Like, this movie feels like, to me, when I saw previews and images, I'm thinking like District 9, which I really liked.
Yeah.
Elysium, which ended up being a mess, but could have been really good, right? And so think about movies like, let's say, Elysium, which are failures, but could have been really good. And it elevates it. And you get Greg Fraser with the cinematography. You get Gareth Edwards' writing and the world building and the characterization. And I cared for these characters. Like, there were points in this movie where I teared up at the stuff that was happening. And like, that little girl, this is her first film.
Yeah. Well, at that age, it would almost have to be.
Well, but yeah, but I mean, she's really good.
She was really good.
I mean, it's like, what else has she been in? This is her film debut, and I mean, her acting in this movie, like, she gave a great performance.
Yeah.
And this is the little girl that. So basically, just to breeze through the story, because I mean, again, a lot of the plot, you've kind of seen this before, but L.A. was leveled by an attack that the U.S. says AI was responsible for. So now, they're basically saying there's Skynet. We have to shut them all down. They're going through and they're blowing them up and they're putting them in the compactor and they're just cleaning up all the robots, all the military.
It's genocide on robots.
Yes, exactly. And so after all that happened, you have John David Washington's character who has now gone undercover and he's trying to find the person that is like the big AI creator. So Nimrata, who is that what translates to the creator? Is that, I think, what they were saying in the beginning of the movie when they were translating it, is the creator. So Nimrata is the one that's advancing all the AI. And so he's gone undercover. He's gone and infiltrated this group, which one of them is Maya, played by Gemma Chan, who's always great. And she is supposedly the daughter of Nimrata, which I guess is true, as we find out. Spoilers, just to interject. I mean, really, I hope you see this movie because I hate to spoil it because I did enjoy uncovering some of this stuff, but as we're here to spoil, so we're just going to be right up front with it. But basically, her father was the creator, and then when he passed away, the title actually got transferred down to her. And while he was undercover, he was trying to get to him, but he did not know that at that point that he was infiltrating, she actually was already heading everything. So he actually gets married to her. She becomes pregnant with his child. And while he's deep undercover and he thinks I'm so close, he doesn't know how close. He was as close as it gets to Nimrata.
he was balls deep undercover.
He was inside the operation, that's for sure. So he's about to, what he thinks, uncover, who the creator, or get to her father, who really the title had been passed on to her. And the U.S. cannot wait. They go to New Asia. They infiltrate under the cover of night. They come in from the ocean, and there's this big attack. They have what is the big machine called? What is the
Nomad?
Nomad. Okay, so they've got the Nomad that's hovering around and trying to hunt down and find all the AI. This is like their $1 trillion super weapon. It's like a star base that is hunting down all the AI, and basically it can target.
That is actually run by AI, right?
Well, all those people in the control center that looked like Apollo 13, they were all running the stuff. I mean, they've got computers, but I don't think it was.
But you saw that the soldiers they were sending down actually ended up being simulants, right?
I didn't think so. Well, but I thought they were in outfits.
Allison Janney, when they're in the transport vehicle, one of the guys that on the team is a simulant, because then later she pulls the chip out of his head and puts it.
No. That's an AI police officer. She scans her real life soldier's memory and then can plug it into an AI to get him to tell her what happened. He was not an AI. She does a brain scan. Gemma Chan's a human too. She does a brain scan on her, and that spoilers at the very end how her consciousness gets in a robot. That was foreshadowing.
But when they're in the transport vehicle, like all of a sudden they realize that the guys, and they strangle him, and he was a simulant. I'm confused.
Yeah, that was the police. That was the New Asia police.
I thought that was
them.
One of their
No,
guys.
Allison Janney was behind enemy lines, and that's why they arrest her. And she's in there with their police, and then they have to fight them and then take their vehicle and stuff. It's just Allison Janney and her one human companion. Everyone else is New Asia police.
Okay.
And that's the AI. They're all their police SWAT team that we think of. And again, I don't think all the police is just robots, but the ones tracking down people with machine guns and stuff, they're sending in there.
It also gets confusing because some of the robots look like robots.
Right. Well,
And some of the robots look like people with whirlybirds.
Well, right. And I'm guessing they're machines. And again, I want to watch this movie again because there's so much world building. And that's
Yeah.
so, like, just to tell the difference between all their police forces and everything. But some of the soldiers are in like SWAT team tactical gear where I'm like, are they robots or are they, because they move like humans. And I guess,
Right.
and I'm sure there are actors that are covered up and they don't
Yeah.
want to CGI them all the way. But it's hard to tell, like, are there human people among the robots who have robot faces because they have helmets on, and you can't really tell, are they...
And I get, you still want to protect the equipment. My phone's in a case.
Right.
You know?
That makes a good point, too. Yeah, so that's what I mean with the world building, where I think it's so realized that it's just confusing because I just saw it for the first time, and I
Right.
want to really understand it because it's so much to take in. But when you
It's visually dense.
Yeah, but when you start picking it apart, it's been, like you just said, like they've thought through that. They're like, yeah, we still need to protect the robots because if they take out the robot, if they don't have any armor and they take out their brain, their CPU or whatever, well, then
Right.
they can't do their roboting. They're done,
Right.
right? So they got to protect them. So 5 years earlier, this takes place in the future, but 5 years before the main story, he's undercover. The U.S. comes and infiltrates. They take out their base of operation, which is his home that he's been in, and they start blowing everyone up. He's talking to one of the U.S. guys where he's like, you're blowing my cover or whatever. Gemma Chan sees that, and she's like, feels betrayed. She has him on gunpoint, and she's pregnant with their child. And he's like, no, come with me. Like, this isn't about you. I'm just trying to get to them. And she's like, this is my family. Also, point of interest here is that she's human, but basically she was taken in by
She was raised by simulants.
So
Yeah.
they have become her family, and they're indistinguishable, again, besides from the whirly birds in their head. Like,
Yeah.
their faces look human, they move like humans.
And I think we should also point out that that the main character, I forget his name.
John David Washington.
Yeah. I mean, he's half robot, right? Like, he doesn't have the AI aspect, but he's got a fake arm, he's got a fake leg because he's been wounded in battle, presumably.
Yeah, he's a double amputee, and Maya, the Gemma Chan character, the way that they meet is she fixes him up. Well, not the way that they meet, but they meet in a bar or whatever when he's going undercover. But she ends up, because she's around all the AI and robots and everything, she's able to craft him, which I guess is another hint. Like, she made him these robot limbs.
Right.
Like, how does she know how to do that just because her dad's the guy? Like,
Right.
she's
it's a family business.
right. But she outfits him with the arm and the robot leg and all that. She has him at gunpoint, and then she basically just bolts out of there. She goes with her AI family because he's like, they're not real. What we have is real. And she's like, no, they're real. Like, they are my family. And so she goes with them, and then you see the Nomad targeting their boats. They go off in the water. He's too late to get to them. And then you see Nomad with the beam of light targeting, and then drops the missile, and boom. As far as we know, they're dead. There's a big blowback on the beach. Fast forward 5 years, he's done with all this because he lost his wife and child. He's just like cleaning up trash, like cleaning up the LA rubble, right? He's like just a cleanup crew guy. And then we get the exposition and just get to see the world of like any robots they find, they're cleaned up and put in the grinder, and their job is to clean up anything AI and round them up and kill them. And you see someone that's new on the job sees one of these robots come to life, and it talks like a human and says like, no, don't do it. And he's like, it's just a robot. It's not real. It doesn't feel anything. These are just machines. So you see he's very obviously cold to the whole thing and just going through the paces. Well, meanwhile, Allison Janney, who I had no idea was in this movie.
I didn't either.
A very interesting role for her, and I think she did a good job. It was hard. I was kind of taken out of it because I'm like, that's Allison Janney. This is weird. But then I'm like, I mean, she does a good job with the cold military character, but you just would not think of her in that role normally.
Yeah.
So, but it was good. She basically comes to his house and says, hey, we need your help. You're the only one that knows how to get to this weapon. They have a weapon that is going to take out Nomad. Nomad is our $1 trillion line of defense. And if that gets taken out, AI wins the war and we're all dead. And so he's like, no, why the hell would I do that? I lost my wife and child in this thing. I had them, and you came in and blew my cover and killed the only thing that I cared
It's
about.
like, that's a you problem.
Yeah, I like that. And he's like, I got TV to watch. I thought that was really... This movie's really funny. We haven't mentioned
Was
that
it?
yet.
I didn't think it was very funny. I think it could have used a little bit more. Like,
it's
for all the cool stuff going on, it wasn't that much fun.
Well,
right? And
but in this world, see, I don't want to be taken out of. That's the thing that takes me out of Marvel movies is when they try to force too much humor. And this cold, dark, scary world with these stakes this high, these world-ending, people getting blown up and their homes destroyed and all that. I don't want jokey joke.
No, I mean, but there's. Agree, but you can. There are different types of humor that can be.
But I thought the whole off. He's off. He kills someone and he's off, and then he did it again. Like that joke that kept coming back, and then he's like, stand by.
Yeah.
And there were like moments that John David Washington, I thought, was really good at under-delivering those jokes that would come back. And then I was laughing at them. I thought they were really funny, but they weren't like take you out of the serious nature quips. I don't know. I really enjoyed the humor of this movie. I thought it was.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't find it all that funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it was trying to be funny and failing. I just didn't think it was funny.
But I liked those throwaway. Most of them were John David Washington, but I like how he's like, I got TV to watch. But they basically say, hey, you're going to want to see this. And they show him a hologram, which we know now, spoilers, is fake to get him to do this because they need him to infiltrate back in and get this weapon that they don't even know what it is.
I mean, when they show him the hologram, I was like, all this technology and that's the best quality footage you can give him? Like, it was really bad.
But they show him the hologram and it's Maya. And he's like, no, she's dead. And they're like, this was from just the other day. Like, this is them at their base of operation. And she goes, we're going to go destroy this base and destroy the weapon. If you go with us and show us how to get to it and guarantee that we can bring this weapon down before it destroys Nomad, then we'll let you rescue her and get her out of there. And so that's how they rope him along for the ride, and it moves pretty quickly. Like, they're in New Asia, they're infiltrating there. They've got their little task force of red shirts. It's just grunts. It's all these people that are not going to really make it, but they're there to be the bad guys. They're like this movie. It's interesting how the U.S. is the bad guys. Like, they're showing how bad the military is and that kind of mentality of take everyone out. And so these grunts are very much
definitely like an allegory for the war on terror.
Yeah.
Right. That it's just like we see ourselves as the hero, but we're going to all these other countries doing awful stuff.
Right. Exactly. So you've got all these grunts going in, and they're just like taking out they're mowing down humans that work in the lab, and they're just mowing everyone down, and they're laughing about it. They're the normal like military bad guy, like hotshot type guys. And so anyway, they infiltrate into the lab, the base of operation for where they think the weapon and Amada are, and they end up getting taken out. Like, almost all of them are taken out by the AI forces. John David Washington is left there as the vault opens where the weapon is, and they all go to help their backup, and he finds a kid there. And I don't know what you thought, but instantly I'm like, this kid has to be their kid somehow. I don't know how.
Yeah, like that was. Yeah, like if they thought they were blowing our minds with that revelation at the end, I was just like, well, no.
Because I told Blake at the beginning, and I'm like, I don't know how, because I'm like, and I was trying to speculate. I'm like, I don't know if this is one of those like movies that's going to be like she was half robot and somehow like immaculate conception. You know what I mean? I didn't know if it was going to be like a robot could have a child because technology is that advanced,
right? Or
it was a miracle kind of thing. I didn't know. I was going more like they're going to blow our minds with some kind of a creation type of thing.
Right.
But I knew, I'm like, that's their kid. I'm like, I that's got to be their kid, right? And Blake's like, maybe, he goes, I bet she's an Amada. So I mean, he called that right away. But I'm like, that's their kid. And anyway, so it come to find out this child, which again, it wasn't that mind-blowing because you knew something had to be going on there. This child is like an AI organic kind of hybrid where the child has all these sophisticated abilities and is able to manipulate machinery. This kind of reminds me of Akira. Have you ever seen Akira? With the telepathic powers and stuff? So it kind of reminds me of that, where I think they do take influence on a lot of those.
Well, also I feel like when he picks up the kid, like, okay, so here it becomes Paper Moon.
Yeah. There's a lot of, how many movies have we seen where it's like the guy that doesn't want to be a dad becomes the adopted father and they go on a trip? I mean, that's a trope for forever, but yes, it definitely does. And anyway, so he, like, the weapon's a kid, and John David Washington, for as jaded as he is, like, he can't, even though it is a robot, it looks like a kid. There aren't simulant kids. We should say that. Everyone's blown away when the kid turns sideways and they're like, they did it. They created a child. This is amazing. No one's ever seen anything like this before, and killing robots is one thing, but when one looks like a human child, like...
Well, and I guess the the real thing is that this simulant will age and grow.
Right, and that's the thing. So it's this advanced weapon that can control computers.
That was
and
one of
as
the
it
other
grows,
things that kind of threw me off. I'm like, so then why are they creating simulants that look like old men? Like, that just seemed weird to me.
well, you see that they're, donate your likeness, and I guess
Yeah.
people for money, like to get money, it's just they want people to exist in society so that it's not so people aren't taken aback by, if you lived in a world where there were just like Ed 209s walking around,
Right.
it'd be weirded out by it. And
Or every robot looked like,
so I
Tom
think
Hanks.
yes.
You'd be like, oh, it's Tom Hanks. That's clearly a robot.
Yeah, robot, right.
Yeah.
So I think what they're trying to do, and they say like donate your likeness to the simulants, and so to get money, that's what the farmers would do, right? And like some were human and some were robots, and they donate their likeness, and so this kid is this advanced AI technology far beyond anything, because as they grow, the AI and the technology actually grows with them, and they have the power to manipulate machines. And so in theory, and as we find out, as they grow more powerful, they will be able to take out Nomad, which is the one thing that's hunting them down and killing them. So obviously the U.S. wants to eliminate this weapon, but John David Washington can't just kill this kid. Like he's still good enough to where he's not going to do that. So he kind of goes on the run with the kid, and he finds out, he shows a picture of Maya, and the kid says mother, so she's the creation, which again, it was also like that's literally mother,
yeah.
but I don't think it was trying to be too sneaky, but if you weren't paying attention, you might not catch on those things. But he basically is, one, doesn't want to kill a kid, and two, wants to be taken to Maya because he's seen that she's still alive. So they go on this road trip. Meanwhile, Allison Janney and her crew are all killed except for her and her one soldier. And I thought it was, pretty good scene where they're in a chopper, and then the one gal is running back and gets like hit with something, and you can tell she wasn't blown up. So
right.
you're like, that had to be a bomb of some kind.
Yeah.
She gets on the chopper, it's taking off, and there's this blinking thing on the back, and they're like, oh crap. I thought they were going to push her out.
I thought for sure
right?
that guy was just going to chuck her out.
Because it's like, I know that sucks, but it's like they're all blown up, or
right.
she's going to blow up anyway.
What you going to do?
It's on her. Like, she's not going to survive that. But anyway, the whole thing gets blown up. And there's only one guy that's left, like half alive. John David Washington ends up, going on this road trip with the kid. They find the one soldier that's like barely hanging on, and they go on their little trip to try to get to Maya. He's eventually killed, or he eventually dies off, and that's the guy that when Allison Janney and her soldier who are left, they get captured by the robot, the New Asia SWAT team or whatever, but they end up, getting out of it and taking their vehicle over, and they're kind of tracking down John David Washington, Joseph, and the weapon. So they get to this guy who is dead, and she's like, let me try to scan his brain and see what happened. So they have this really cool technology where they set up the scan, they download it to an SD card, and then they can put that SD card in any simulant and upload their consciousness, which if you watch Westworld, a lot of this is very similar to Westworld.
I watched the first season, but yeah.
The concepts,
right.
These are robots, but if robots can think and feel, can we just treat them like things when if they have their own AI? Like, it's a shame that doesn't get to finish out, because they were doing some really interesting thought on. I mean, there's been no time more relevant for this subject matter, and Westworld was going to wrap up their thought on this, and here it gets canceled by stupid Zaslav. But anyway, so she uploads the consciousness real quick, and he's like, they're trying to find Namada, basically, and and then he dies. But we get that foreshadowing where, one, you can upload a consciousness like that, and I guess that's really the foreshadowing. They introduce the technology, you can do that, because it's going to come into play at the end. So anyway, they're on the run, and the whole thing is just, making friends with AI, trying to get to, what's her name? I keep forgetting, Gemma Chan's character. Maya, sorry.
I keep wanting to just call her Nimrata.
Yeah, right. So they're trying to get to Maya, and along the way, that scene with the family I thought was funny. Like, when they're all getting shot at and they get away, and they're like, "Did anyone have fun?" And one kid raises his hand. He's like,
"That was
good."
Funny. I liked that.
But it was like I think John David Washington's very funny. And did you see Tenet?
Yeah, I thought that was great.
And he had he seems like a naturally, he's obviously charismatic, and they always give him little throwaway lines like, like in Tenet, when I think it's Tenet, when he goes into the kitchen or whatever, and he's like hitting people and saying little quips and stuff. Like he's really good at understating these lines, and he does that stuff here. But there's that moment where, so he has the family at gunpoint and is trying to get through
the checkpoints.
And we see the girl's powers really at first, like we saw she could turn on a car, but like here at the checkpoint, she shuts down all the power, turns on the power to just the car, floors it, gets them through all that. But we go from him holding this family at gunpoint to him kind of infiltrating back in with the simulants and seeing like that they just want peace. Like they didn't ask for any of this. And when is that Ken Watanabe? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah,
is the like Ken Watanabe? He is the main simulant, like the Namorada's lieutenant. He's like the next up guy that's kind of leading all their forces. He's always so good, and he basically says, again, like, we just want to live in peace. You know what's going to happen when we're done with this war? We're going to live in peace. Nothing. We don't want to attack humans. We want to live in harmony with them. And then we eventually find out, and again, I have no reason not to believe him. He says the attack on LA, that was a human programming error. But I really liked what it had to say, because again, I'm not all for like, yeah, AI is great and like isn't dangerous at all. But the point is, like, if you just blame technology and blame things, like humans do all this terrible stuff, and then we just find something to blame. And I thought this was a really good show of that. We're like, look at all the good stuff that AI does. And, when used and put in check, when the checks are in place, like, it can be fine. But if AI does something bad because a human made it, and then you're just like, all AI is bad, that's the same thing as blaming like all.
Yeah, but AI is a little different because, so like, yes, a hammer can also be a murder weapon, but a hammer can't create 15 other hammers.
Yeah.
Right? And where AI, it starts to like spread out and self-replicate in these ways that we can't predict. Like, if you create a hammer, if you look at a hammer, you instantly know, well, I could hit somebody in the head with this.
Right.
Like, you can extrapolate out where that's could feasibly end up.
Sure.
Right? But with AI, like, you can't predict the different permutations it will create, especially when it starts creating on its own.
Yeah.
Like that's where it becomes problematic. And that's where I felt like this movie was a little simplistic in that regard.
Yeah. I don't think this movie it doesn't delve into anti-AI, but I also appreciated how they weren't, sometimes movies try to say too much, right? And we say, well, the message gets muddied down. Like there's a whole other film somewhere that's going to be made, obviously, with all this going on, that's about the dangers of AI. And I'm not just talking about Skynet and Terminator, but there's a very realistic, like, current day AI movie that's going to be made, and it will investigate.
Yeah, like, I would rather see a movie that tells the dangers of AI, and it's not like, oh, nuclear war. Like,
yes.
like
what's
it's
the very real applications
Right.
of not Skynet and John Connor and all that? It's like, no, but like, what's the very realistic implication in the next 5 years?
Right.
Everyone's out of jobs. And,
right. Like, I'd rather see. I'd like to see a story about that potential future rather than because like, I know this sounds kind of like, we're very lucky to live in a time when like nuclear war isn't as scary as it once was, because it doesn't feel as likely. Like, as growing up in the 80s, it was this, I mean, that was just a constant threat of like, there could be a nuclear war at any minute. And
like, I talked to my grandma about like the atomic bomb and stuff.
Right.
I mean, like, in her, I mean, she was very young, but like, she still remembers them all like celebrating on the street when the war was over and stuff. But like, living through that atomic shelters and things like that, and it would be terrifying. So like, yeah, this stuff exists, but we don't live under the constant threat of it. But yeah, I think there's a movie, and like, as of last week, or as of whenever this agreement gets signed, like, someone's writing that movie. 20 people are writing that movie. Right. But what I like is this is
3 computer programs.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But what I like about this film is, again, this isn't tackling the dangers of AI. AI is a very helpful tool, and again, we use it. You're listening to this podcast that I edited with AI. It scans all the text and it predicts things so that I can find the words and delete them and shorten the gaps. Like, that's AI. That's learning,
for sure.
it's useful. And so for people to just go AI bad, scary, Skynet, like that's wrong. And I think
that is also simplistic.
Yeah, and this is also an allegory for people that look different from you. This is different cultures. This is, even though this is AI and robots, which is a real topic, this is also, let's take out all these people that look different than us, and they're trying to live their lives peacefully. And again, like you said, I mean, it's an allegory for the war and the U.S. butting in on all these things and saying, you know, for the greater good and all this, when it's like the threat isn't exactly what they're saying. So I really liked that whole deal on it, and how it's not just saying AI bad and they're the bad guys, because in this movie it's the US and it's the people trying to take it out. And what we find out, and as we're led to believe, a human made that mistake. And it's just like, again, like if a human uses a bunch of these weapons for bad and then we ban the weapons, or, you know, the computer systems, if they use these computers to put out all these attacks and we just ban computers, it's like, well, computers are very helpful 99.9% of the time. You use the computers to send missiles.
Right.
Don't ban computers. We don't go back to the dark ages.
To the hammer analogy, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can use that, right. And so and then I don't want to be like pro-gun, because I know that argument can be made. You know, there are valid arguments to be made, but you know what I'm saying? Because you're like, oh, it's not the guns, it's the people or whatever. Right. Like, so I know it gets kind of into that, but this is military, so
but the difference there would be, and I'm not anti-gun, but I'm also not anti-gun control.
Well, right.
But the difference there would be, like, a hammer serves a purpose in terms of its intended purpose is to drive nails,
and you can use it for something else,
a gun's intended purpose is to kill things, right? Like, and so there are certainly times when you need a gun to kill things, or things you need to kill, or things that self-defense,
to protect you, right?
Yeah, so yes,
you're right. Different purpose. Computers are used for much more than sending missiles.
A lot more nuanced.
Right. So that's what I'm getting at, is that, you know, if you just ban computers and we go back to the dark ages because someone used computers to send missiles, that's stupid.
Yes.
But that's what they're trying to do. AI is used for all parts of life, and one human made an error, a very bad, very terrible error, but a human made a programming error, and now we've said all AI must be killed and hunted, when now AI has gotten to the point where they are basically humans who have families and make decisions, which is, you know, it's just to show you that, you know, these have evolved to a point, which is what Westworld was making such a great point of. Westworld starts off in season 1 as a theme park, as you're going to go there and it's for humans to get their rocks off and kill and and have sex and all this stuff. But
and we see that here too. You see simulant strippers.
Yeah, right.
But you see that they don't have the lady parts.
Right,
and
robot legs.
Nobody's going to a strip bar to look at.
I didn't really understand. Yeah, that's a little weird.
Like you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what people look for in strip clubs.
Right. It's like their top was covered and they had robot legs.
Right.
Like, what are you?
I'm just like,
but
unless some new fetishes have developed,
right? I mean,
perhaps,
you know, if they're into
the
legs, yeah. So anyway, I get what you're saying, and it is simplistic in the AI, but they're not. This movie isn't trying to make a statement on that. They're not trying to analyze AI and the dangers of it. It's more about the dangers of mankind, and they're telling it in a way that AI is a very real thing now. And so it's just, I think it's to show people, like, let's not count AI out. Let's not destroy it because it could be used for bad, because it is used in a lot of good ways. But my point about Westworld was, like, the AI had advanced so far that now the robots were, like, having feelings and memories and thinking for themselves and creating. The robots were creating. Right. And so now, is it fair for humans, just because they created these things, now that they're sentient and painting and creating beauty, to kill and rape and like, that's because these things feel now, and that's, you know, at what point? And so at this point, obviously in the future, this AI, these simulants are so far advanced to just mow them down because one human blew something up on their error to kill these whole AI communities is terrible, right? And so anyway, I liked all that part, but the point is they eventually get to where they're going. He's trying to find Maya.
She had a ring. He gave her a ring that was a tracker. They gave Maya a ring that was a tracker, and so they go looking for that ring.
Oh, he finds his human counterpart, that the one that his friend that came and kind of blew the cover or told him, like, this is what's going on. He finds him, and now he is integrated in with the simulants and has, like, a simulant girlfriend, and, like, he's changed sides as well, and realized who the good guys really are, and they get into that whole thing. The police come. There's a really good action scene. I mean, there's some really good, gun scenes between the SWAT team simulants and John David Washington, and they're kicking ass and stuff. And anyway, but they get away and they eventually find Ken Watanabe, and he's very much like, feeling betrayed. He's, he always called him brother before, and he now realizes that he was betrayed because, he knows that he was in on it. But he eventually gains his trust when they're basically at the point where I think where Maya is, no, it's just their base, I guess. And he's going there to try to find her and find them. And the U.S. has sent they've got these huge tanks that are mowing down communities and just blowing missiles up and everything. And they send these two little robot bombs, basically,
right.
And they're sending them, and one goes through and runs past them. And I thought it was really interesting. This is another part of the world building, and like, they have like little personalities, and it's just interesting that like they spend so much time creating these little characters that are just going to go blow up, but I don't know, it makes it feel lived in. And so anyway, the bomb goes in and runs in and just destroys their base and kills people and everything, and Allison Janney sends in another one, but John David Washington's trying to take the little girl to go find Maya, but she runs away. She's like, they need my help. So she ends up back at the base, and before this other robot comes and tries to blow more of their base up, she stops it using her controls, and the robot kind of like deactivates, and she's talking to it. But meanwhile, here comes Allison Janney's second in command, her soldier, and comes and shoots. What is the little girl's name? He calls her Alfie, so we'll just call her Alfie. That's her. Madeline Una Voiles is the actor's name, and I just want to give her credit. She gave an amazing performance, especially for her debut. But anyway, her like computer name is Alpha, blah blah blah. So he calls her Alfie. She gets shot, not mortally wounded, but she's injured, and John David Washington scoops her up, and Ken Watanabe realizes like, okay, he's on our side. Like, he's trying to save her, and he kills the guy that was going to kill her. So when he sees that, he's like, oh, okay, he's on our team. And anyway, he's like, I need to find Maya. She's the only one that can save her. And like, his other soldier person is like, bring him to her. And so they trek, and I really liked this whole, Eastern Buddhist kind of a thing. Like, even though there were simulants and robots and stuff, but it was all very Buddhist and just a different culture and different belief. And so they go to their temple, and in this temple, Nimata, who is Maya, is being guarded, but it is not who he expected. It's not how he expected to see her. That whole thing was fake. We find out in the attack, she was like put into a coma.
She was wounded, which makes sense, because when they said she lived, I was like, you see her literally running into what looks like the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan, and I'm like, how is she living through that?
And at first I'm like, well, how did they live? But they're robots,
right?
So like, okay, they can take. He gets blasted through the chest, it looks like, and he's like living to fight another day.
Right.
So they're very advanced machines that can be repaired, where she is a human, and which I wasn't sure about. See, I was like,
I was wondering about that too.
And they show her like she has some kind of tattoo on her in the beginning, and I'm like, is she really? Did Nimata create her?
Right.
And I know it was a long shot, but my guess was that somehow life was created between human and AI, and the child was born in a weird...
I was wondering about that too.
But anyway, we come to find out that she was put into this coma, and the simulants, because they are so good, and again, everything we're led to believe, like, they will not kill humans for no reason. Like, they won't even take her out of her misery. Like, she's still alive in this coma, and she can't pass. She can't go to heaven. She can't.
They need him to do what they can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's a very heartbreaking scene, and Alfie's there and all cuddled up with her, and she gives this great performance about like, help her go to heaven, like move on. And there's that other touching scene like they lead up with where she's like, and she's such a good little actor, where she's like, I guess neither of us are going to heaven. Only good people go to heaven. Right. You're not good, and I'm not a person. Not people. And it's like, it's just really good. And so that comes back a couple times, going to come back later. But anyway, he unplugs her so she's able to pass on, but not before Allison Janney comes. And this is a really good scene too, that again shows how good that the simulants and the AI are, where Allison Janney's like, all right, this is it. Like, we're going to kill you're lucky that we're supposed to bring the weapon back and bring you back, because otherwise I would take you all out right now. So she's like, let's go. And he says, Namada, their goal is to like take out Namada, bring back the weapon in him. And he's like, well, she's already gone. I just pulled the plug on her. And she's like, we'll see about that. And the foreshadowing earlier, what I was trying to say was not only can you download people, but they show us, she says, oh, this guy's been dead for 2 hours. We can't get a good brain scan.
Right.
Well, he just pulled the plug on her. So her brain is technically been
do it while they're fresh.
Yeah, her brain is technically active, which is foreshadowing for we'll see about that. So as soon as she brings in the computer and does the scan, I'm like, oh, cool, they got her consciousness, which I thought may have played out in a more happy way, but it was for a moment. But but I'm like, oh, they got her. They can be a family again. They just downloaded her brain. So anyway, she does the scan, and then all of a sudden, Ken Watanabe comes in, and her soldiers are there with guns drawn. And it's this big standoff. It basically ends up being that Ken Watanabe shoots her with the foreshadowed missile bomb thing, and she's like, get it off me. And the kid, because of how good she is and has learned to grow up and love humans, and she's innocent, right? She hasn't grown up in this world where humans are trying to take them all out. I mean, she's younger. She hasn't been, like Ken Watanabe started off like humans are my friend, and now we've all been hunted and killed, and he's a little bit jaded. Sure. Where she is more like she's grown up and been instilled in her that humans we're to coexist with them. And so I really liked this moment where she tries to turn off the bomb, just like she tried to turn off the bomb with the little robot that ran in, and her soldiers mistake that for, no, take her out. They're going to try. She's trying to blow it up or mess with it. And Allison Janney's like, no. She realized she was trying to save her, but they screw it up. She blows up, like, see ya. Anyway, Ken Watanabe, again, he gets shot, but he gets up and is like, calls him brother. So they're back in their good graces and they're working together. But they get captured, right? I mean, even though they escape from there, it's like, it's a moot point. Like the military is infiltrated, they capture her and knock him out. They're separated, and it flash forwards like, I don't know how long, a year or it's a little bit in the future.
Yeah, I don't remember how much, but yeah.
And so it seems like the humans have won, like all that was for naught. Like, I mean, it was a pretty good way to like kind of head fake the ending, because it seems like we're wrapping it up.
Right.
They tried, but unfortunately the bad guys, the military has gotten the weapon, the Alfie, Nomad's still taking out all the AI. But we fast forward and they can't kill Alfie. They like, no matter what they try, like they say they want to do it cleanly. They're not trying to like put her in a bomb and blow her up or something. Like, they're trying to deactivate her,
right?
But she will not let them, because she's in control of all technology, in control of all weapons. So no matter what they do, they can't. So they bring in John David Washington again, who has kind of been, I mean, he's not in jail or anything. Like, he kind of got pardoned, like, for he did his job, even though
at the end of the day, he did what they wanted, right? Like, he killed Narmada. Literally, he pulls the plug on her
and brought them the weapon.
And he brings them Alfie. Which,
right.
So, like, even though he was trying not to do that, at the end of the day, he ended up doing exactly what they wanted him to do.
And I don't think they knew, remember? Because Allison Janney's like, good thing they don't know, and I have orders to bring you in alive, or I would take you out right now. So once she's dead, I guess they don't actually have any record of him fighting with them. So he kind of gets away, but it's obviously not the happy ending, because he's grown accustomed. And this is the big like reveal that we all kind of saw something was coming, but we find out that Maya had put in their unborn child, she had done a scan of the embryo of the child that she did lose. Obviously she lost, and while she was in the coma and all that, but she had scanned that previous to the attack 5 years earlier, and put their child's DNA or whatever cloning into Alfie. So that is their child in a way, and she is organic. So it is kind of, it wasn't like a birth type thing, but because she's organic and can grow and is part AI, it is this interesting like hybrid of human AI life. So anyway, so obviously, he was growing to like her, and, is the trope of the like road trip with the kid that you don't want anything to do with, and then you become, the surrogate father. Yeah. Well, he is really the closest thing to a father she's going to have. So he feels for the child, and he goes in there, and, it looks like he's going to decommission her. He gives her like the gun.
It's a gun that's like an EMP.
Yeah. And so instead of, it looks like he's going to set it at full blast, but it plays back to where he says like, killing is off and standby. He puts Ken Watanabe in standby earlier in the movie. So we see a little bit later when it flashes back what he tells her. She's like, are you going to turn me off? Or however, it's not worded like that. Sounds weird, but is it going to be off? Because that's a theme throughout the film, and we find out he says to her, just stand by.
Yeah.
And so she basically is faking playing dead. He says, I want to go to the funeral, and the general's like, it's not really a funeral, she's going to be incinerated, it's not really, but he's like, for me it's a funeral. So he rides with her, and then his plan goes into motion. He reactivates her. She uses her powers to like flip over the cars, and they escape. And so they are going to use a moon shuttle launch to get up to
And we should
Nomad.
say a moon shuttle launch at this point is commercial.
Yeah.
It's like it's not like there just happens to be a shuttle launch.
No,
It's-
yeah.
They basically
They're on
hijack,
Southwest
They
to-
hijack a plane.
Yeah, they're on
essentially, yeah.
Southwest to the moon, basically. So anyway, they're going to use a shuttle launch. She's able to infiltrate all the security, by using her technology to bypass it. They get on the shuttle. The government catches wind of the plan, but it's too late because she can control the shuttle. She has them land and dock on Nomad, and then you get this really good, really tense sequence. I loved this, of her basically running through the base trying to get to hack their system to stop the missiles from launching on all the AI bases around the world, and shut them down. While meanwhile, he is trying to blow up the base. So he puts on a space suit that was in the space shuttle from their travels, and he's on the outside, like they're like in orbit, like like Earth is below them. It's that midpoint where it's
Right.
like they're not in outer space, but they're
They're at
right
the
there.
outer reaches of our atmosphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you see all that taking place, and again, the CG is really good and really tense. So he is climbing on like the platform that launches the missiles. Meanwhile, the U.S. knows they're trying to shut them down. So the guys like launch all of the missiles, or fire Z missiles if you're a Newgrounds 2000 meme launcher guy or viewer. So anyway, he's like, fire all these missiles. John David Washington is climbing on the outside, and as the missiles are launching, he's on a missile as it's like locking them in place to fire them. And so Alfie is able to save the day and stop the launch right at the last second, where he's like on the missile about to be locked into place to fire. And I just thought it was
Like
a really
Strangelove.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's about to write it down. So I thought it was a really tense sequence. I mean, this
Although
whole...
when she deactivates them, they show one of the missiles just like hitting the ground and sliding, and I'm like, I'm not really sure that's how gravity works. Like,
Yeah.
I think, like it might not have exploded, but it would have like still like buried.
Well,
itself
they show them, they were firing, parallel to the ground. They weren't going straight down. They were launching and like gliding to their destination. And so when it stopped, I
didn't
didn't
see
go
the gliding part. I just saw they're dropping them from space.
No. There's
Yeah.
some establishing shots where they show it twice, actually, where the missiles are next to each other, going to their destination. They get into the atmosphere and they level out, and then they're going like for, I guess, aerodynamics or whatever. They go to their destinations, and so as it slowed down, it like.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess without the computers doing the detonation, like it's not an impact thing necessarily, but if the nuclear warhead doesn't launch into the whatever, I don't know the technicalities, but it doesn't hit the ground, explode. The computer has to drop whatever into the reaction.
For sure.
So anyway, they stop that. Some of the missiles are gone, though, and it is killing more people and detonating around the world, at least a few of them, but they did save some. And the Buddhist, like the main where Ken Watanabe is, they did save that place, hadn't been launched. But the U.S. is, trying to do everything that they can. And so meanwhile, she's trying to get back to the spaceship, and they are able to kind of like they're trying to take out the remaining bases they can with their system. They're also trying to stop them from getting away because he's like, kill them both. And so it's just down to the wire. He's got a 10-minute timer on the missile that stopped that he was riding on. They got 10 minutes. And so he's getting back to the shuttle, but she's like, I want to go save Mother, because I guess she, at some point, Gemma Chan's Maya had scanned her likeness to help the cause, right? And so he's been seeing a lot of the Maya-looking robots around, and so she is able to, or she has seen, or she goes to their AI research, and she finds a Maya-looking AI, and from the scan that Allison Janney did, they've been kind of keeping her with them, and he puts the necklace with the I'll call it flash drive, the Maya flash drive, onto Alfie, and she's got it, and she's like, I want to put our family back together.
Right.
So she puts the chip into her. She doesn't immediately activate, and she's like, I gotta go. She can't drag her any further, and so she runs back to the shuttle. There's a really big climactic scene where she gets into the escape pod, but the he's almost out of oxygen, and she locks the little in-between part so he can regain consciousness and all that. And meanwhile, the U.S. sends a robot octopus-looking thing down, and big action sequence, very tense. It ends up basically like almost taking them out and the detonator thing out, but she controls it with her powers, kind of saves the day. And he's like, I can't get in. The door's locked. Like, you have to go finish this. And he's like, I'll see you in heaven. We did it now. Like, you've made me a good person, you know, by doing this. And so it's a really heartbreaking moment where they're between the glass, and he's like, he fires the escape pod, right? And she's crying and he's upset, and he says, I love you. It's the first time that he said, I love you to Alfie. And she says, I love you too. And they're able to have that moment. She crash lands back on Earth. The missile detonates, Nomad's gone, see ya, everything blows up, and there's a big celebration down on the ground, and they know that, once Nomad's gone, like, that's it. They don't have the resources to build another Nomad. That was their last.
You thought that about the Death Star.
Right, exactly. And then all of a sudden, Death Star too.
Yeah.
But so I mean, that's pretty much.
Well, and we get a moment of Joshua and Maya reuniting.
That is set up very, like, that's the only thing where, I mean, it's a nice moment. I love it, but it's just like, I guess it makes sense because she wanted to reunite them, but it's just like, of course he left her there. I guess the part I didn't like, it's not the whole setup of it, but Joshua just happens to stumble back through the fields where she is. I mean, I guess that's just how it goes.
It's a little bit of a bow. But
it's a little bit of it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I love this movie so much that it didn't totally take me out, because I do like the moment where he's like Maya and she's like Joshua, and they embrace, and then the place blows up.
and then it blows up.
So yes, it is a nice little moment where they do get to have they get to say their goodbyes in a sense. But yeah, so now things are peaceful. I mean, until the U.S. finds another way, of course.
Yes, it's what we do.
Try to, the creator too. But, for the moment, though, everything seems good, and Alfie's there and is able to be there with their family and saves the day. And yeah, I really, really liked this movie. It felt like an original concept. I know that you said that, of course, all these it's really hard to find sci-fi that doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Star Wars, look at Lord of the Rings,
For sure.
The hero's journey, all that. It's very hard not to find things that it borrows from, but it felt original enough to me. And because the characters were so fleshed out and the world building was so good and it looked breathtaking, I was just enraptured by the whole world that they had built for it, and I thought it was really interesting. And again, like, I teared up a couple times. I thought when they get you to care about robots, so to speak, like, and again, I know the whole point is like, are they just robots? That's the point. But when they get you to care about people or things that have been created, that's when I think they do a really good job. And I found that I was caring about the characters and caring about the machines.
Yeah.
Just like in Westworld, how it's like, we're humans, so of course we want to be like, we want humans to survive. But when you see how terrible humans are, as Westworld goes on.
I was just frustrated because I felt like this overall, I liked the movie, but I thought it was really close to, it could have been great.
Yeah.
Instead of good.
Okay.
And so I was frustrated in that regard.
Yeah.
Like,
I think the big head scratcher is going to be the complaints you had, which I do think if you read into it more, I just think that they were focusing on the other side, the things we talked about. But I think the takeaway that any detractors or people that are on the fence are going to say is, it's like, you're saying AI is good, like save AI, which I don't think they're saying. I think everyone's for checks and being precautionary and like, I think everyone's for that, but we shouldn't just say it's bad, destroy it all, because it can be very helpful, as we know from experience. So there is a balance there.
It's also scary knowing how helpful it can be, like, for us on a show like this. If it's gotten so good that it can help at a cost-effective way for something as minor as what we do, what's the good AI doing?
Yeah,
you know
for sure.
What's the expensive stuff that we can't afford? What's it capable of?
Oh my gosh. Well, if you think, I mean, there's been, I don't know if we talked about it, but I think I sent you articles a month or two ago about NVIDIA, who makes graphics cards, and gamers know them from their video cards, and they also run chips, and the Nintendo Switch is based off a NVIDIA Tegra chip and all this stuff, but their stock has been like doubling because they invested heavily in AI.
Right.
And everyone that's doing AI work, I say everyone, but like most people are buying the NVIDIA processors because they have like thousands of cores and do all these calculations, right? Like they've invested in that, and their investment's paying off. Their stock doubled. So not only have graphics cards been going up, it was for mining and stuff, but then mining went away because crypto died off.
Right.
But they happen to invest in AI. Like they've chosen the right things. And so NVIDIA is doing great in that arena, and they are spending millions and millions, and companies are spending millions. Google, their servers, they're buying all these NVIDIA chips. And so the point is, there is some really powerful stuff out there, and their chips are running not only like ChatGPT and Midjourney and all that, like those are all mostly being ran on these NVIDIA servers. But yeah, what is the government doing? I mean, there are so many applications we can't even envision. All we see is like, make this Wes Anderson movie look like Lord of the Rings. Like we're seeing silly stuff.
Yeah.
And find curse words, edit Joe out, so that we don't get in trouble. Like we're using it for all these applications, but you're right. Like technology is always lagging a little bit, like plasma TVs.
Yeah.
When plasma TVs came out, and they were expensive, but it was like, wow, you can mount a TV on the wall. It was before LED and LCD TVs. And it was amazing. Well, the Navy was using plasma TVs on their ships like 10 years earlier.
Right.
So we hadn't heard of it until it showed up at Best Buy.
So much of that stuff has been invented by the government.
Yeah, for necessity,
by DARPA and stuff like that. Like
they couldn't
crazy.
have tube TVs on a submarine. There was no room for that, so they invented plasma. And then when the technology becomes affordable enough, Best Buy starts selling plasmas, starts selling LEDs. Like that stuff is always staggered. So if we're getting this good of ChatGPT for silly things and creating pictures, what is the one that hasn't been given to consumers yet doing? Which is, I think, automating a lot of probably traffic lights, and you know what I mean? Like they're doing a lot of things that they can now automate that humans just don't have the time or even can't do the calculations on.
It's too complex.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So although the movie doesn't get into that, I think that what it does tackle is interesting enough, and I'm sure, again, there will be some movie that it talks about the real dangers of AI, and it'll be interesting to see what that will be.
And if for no other reason, it just looks great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this movie is breathtaking. Again, Greg Fraser, like, everyone, you've got all those Dean Cundy and Roger Deakins and all that, and Greg Fraser has become one of those names. You know, he is now known, like, with all these last films that have just looked incredible. So this is a beautiful looking movie. I mean, if you haven't seen Rogue One, like if you're not a Star Wars person, see Rogue One. That's probably
you don't have to see all the other Star Wars movies for Rogue One to make sense.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's a New Hope
story.
prequel. So like I was gonna say it's probably the least Star Warsy Star Wars movie. So I would say that's your entry point, or even if you just want to see one and not care about all the other stuff, it's a great one to check out.
For sure. So anyway, I guess that's it for this one. Let's go around the table and you can say where to find you.
This is Kevin. Follow me on Twitter at Kevin R. Brackett, which I hardly ever even use anymore. X or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But follow Circle of Wizards. By the time this comes out, there should be our second episode. So it's myself and Matt F. Bosler, and we're talking about video games.
Awesome. And you can find me on Twitter at Roger Kubert or on Facebook at facebook.com/Tom O'Keefe. You can find the show online at facebook.com/Real Spoilers. While you're there, like the page, join the group, and of course, don't forget our Patreon at patreon.com/Real Spoilers. So that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Kyoko stabs Nathan.
Get ready for a spoiler. Won't say it twice, 'cause we already